In this job, you learn the difference between a prank and a plea. Pranksters try to be scary. They put effort into it. They scream. They whisper threats. They picked up from movies where they play distorted audio files they found on some forum. They want a reaction. They want you to gasp, to stutter, to lose that professional cool that separates the dispatcher from the panic. But real fear is boring. It's quiet. It's the sound of a woman locking a bathroom door and sliding into the empty bathtub, trying to make her breath vanish because she knows the footsteps in the hall are listening for it. Real fear is the silence of a driver realizing the car isn't going to stop before the embankment. It's the absence of noise that haunts you. I've been a dispatcher for 12 years in this county, and I've heard every variation of human distress. I've heard the adrenaline-fueled screaming of bar fights and the hollow, flat tones of people reporting a body in the river. I've developed an ear for the truth, a kind of sixth sense that lives in the static between words. I trust that sense more than I trust my own eyes sometimes, but last night, that trust was broken. Last night, the logic I've built my entire life around, the simple binary belief that the dead stay dead, was dismantled, call by call. It started with the weather. It always does in Oregon. We were in the middle of atmospheric river event, a narrow corridor of concentrated moisture, hammering the Pacific Northwest with the kind of rain that feels personal. The wind was gusting over 60 miles per hour, tearing limbs off the Douglas firs and sending them crashing onto power lines across the Tri-County area. The comm center, where I spend my nights, is usually a fortress. It's a windowless concrete bunker designed to withstand earthquakes, floods, and riots. Inside, the air is always 70 degrees, smelling faintly of ozone from the server racks and stale coffee from the break room pot. It's a submarine, pressurized and isolated from the world we watch on our screens. But even the bunker felt the storm last night. The lights had flickered 3 times before midnight, forcing the backup generators to kick in with a low, vibrating hum that you felt in your teeth, more than you heard. The radio towers on the peaks were taking a beating. We were getting intermittent static on the patrol channels, bursts of white noise that sounded like waves crashing on a rocky shore. I was working the graveyard shift alone on the console, a skeleton crew for a night when no one in their right mind should be outside. My partner had called out sick with the flu, leaving me to manage the board. It wasn't usually a problem. On a night like this, the calls are mostly predictable. Trees down on roadways, power lines arcing in the wind, maybe a few domestic disputes exacerbated by cabin fever and alcohol. I had my routine. I had my 4 monitors, arranged in a semicircle, glowing with the comforting blue light of the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch system. I had the map of the county spread out on the left screen, a digital tapestry of roads, rivers, and topography. I was the eye in the sky. I was the voice in the dark. I was in control. At 2:14 a.m., the first anomaly appeared. It wasn't a radio call. It was a landline 911 ring. That in itself was rare these days. Most calls come from cell phones, pinging off towers with varying degrees of accuracy. A landline means a physical address, a hardwired connection to a specific point on the earth. It's reliable. It's solid. I adjusted my headset, took a sip of lukewarm water, and clicked the answer icon. 911. What is the location of your emergency? Silence. Not the empty silence of a dead line, though. The line was open. I could hear the background hum, the faint hiss of the connection. And underneath that, something else. A sound that made the hair on my arm stand up, though I couldn't immediately say why. This is 911, I repeated, keeping my voice level, authoritative. If you cannot speak, press a button on your keypad. Press any button twice, nothing. Just that sound. I turned up the volume on my headset, closing my eyes to filter out the hum of the server fans in the room. I focused entirely on the audio feed. It was a rhythmic wet sound. Rattle. Pause. Hiss. Rattle. Pause. Hiss. It sounded like breathing, but not healthy breathing. It sounded like fluid moving through a narrow tube. It sounded like a lung fighting a losing battle against gravity and mucus. It was the sound of agonal respiration, the gasping reflex of a body that is already technically shut down but doesn't know it yet. I've heard it before on calls, where the ambulance was 10 minutes too late. It's a sound that sticks to you. I can hear you, I said, typing a command into the CAD to trace the line. I am sending help. I need you to try to stay on the line. The trace result popped up on my screen in a bright yellow box. Asterisk location, County Morgue/Medical Examiner's Office. Asterisk Christic de Des. 400 BA Scene Rod. Asterisk Prison. Line. Axtine Gine. 104. Odos Quate BS. I stared at the screen. The text didn't make sense. The morgue is in the basement of the county health building. At 2:15 in the morning, it's locked tight. The medical examiner, Dr. Eris, goes home at 5. The night technicians leave by midnight. Unless there's a mass casualty event, and we hadn't had one of those. Is there someone there? I asked, my voice tight. Are you an employee? The wet rattling continued. Hiss, click, rattle. I muted my microphone and grabbed the desk phone, dialing the direct line for the building's security desk at the health complex. The phone rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. Security, this is Miller. Miller, it's Mark at dispatch, I said, keeping one ear on the 911 line. I've got a 911 open line coming from the morgue. Extension 104, that's the main suite. Right? Miller yawned, the sound crackling over the receiver. Yeah, that's the cutting room. But there's nobody down there, Mark. Place is buttoned up. I did my rounds 20 minutes ago. I have an open line, I insisted. It sounds like someone is in distress, medical distress. Can you check it? Keep me on the phone. All right, Miller grumbled. I heard the jingle of keys and the squeak of his chair, probably just the storm messing with the copper lines. We had a leak down there last month. Maybe water got into the junction box. Just check it, Miller. I waited. On the 911 line, the breathing hadn't changed. It was perfectly consistent, too consistent. A human in that much pain would shift, would groan, would try to cough. This was mechanical in its repetition, yet organic in its texture. It was like a loop of a dying man, playing over and over. I listened to Miller's footsteps echoing on the tile floors of the health building. I heard the beep of a keycard reader. Then the heavy thunk of a magnetic lock disengaging. I'm at the elevator, Miller said. Going down. You still hearing it? Yeah, it's still there. The elevator dinged. More footsteps. Slower this time. Miller was entering the basement. The air down there is different, heavy, smelling of formaldehyde and industrial cleaner. I could imagine the long hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering on motion sensors, the stainless steel doors at the end. Okay, I'm at the suite, Miller whispered. He sounded wider awake now. The creepiness of a dark morgue has a way of cutting through fatigue. I'm opening the door. I heard the door creak. Then silence from Miller's end. Miller, I'm here, he said, his voice echoing in the large tiled room. Mark, it's empty. Lights are off. Nobody's here. Check the phone, I said. Extension 104. It should be off the hook. I heard him walking across the room. I visualized the layout, the steel tables, the scales, the wall of refrigerated drawers, phones on the wall. Miller said, It's on the hook, Mark. It's not in use. I'm looking right at it. My stomach dropped. You sure? I'm standing right in front of it. The receiver is cradled. The line is dead. I looked at my screen. The 911 call was still active. The timer was at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The breathing was still there in my left ear. Rattle. Hiss. Miller, are you alone down there? Yeah, why? Get out. I said. Just lock it up and go back to the desk. It must be a technical glitch. A crossed line at the switchboard. You don't have to tell me twice, Miller said. I heard him retreating fast, the door slamming shut behind him. I hung up with Miller. I looked at the 911 line. I didn't want to disconnect it, but there was nothing I could do. If the phone was on the hook, the signal was a phantom. A ghost in the machine caused by the storm. Water in a conduit somewhere, bridging a connection. It happened. It was rare, but it happened. 911, I am disconnecting this line, I said to the breathing. If you have an emergency, call back. I clicked the red button. The line went dead. The silence in the room rushed back in, heavy and oppressive. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and rubbed my face. Just the storm. Just the wires getting crossed. I went back to my routine. I checked the weather radar. The heart of the cell was moving over the eastern mountains now, towards the high desert. The wind warnings were still active. I logged a few non-emergency calls, a tree blocking a county road, a burglar alarm at a pharmacy that was almost certainly wind-triggered. I tried to settle back into the rhythm of the night. 10 minutes passed. Then, the red light flashed again. Another 911 call. Landline. I stared at it for a second before answering. A cold knot of dread tightened in my chest. I knew before I even clicked the mouse what I was going to hear. 911, location of your emergency. Rattle, hiss, click. The same sound, identical. The same wet, struggling intake of air. The same fluid-filled exhalation. It wasn't similar, it was the same. I slammed my hand down on the desk. This is 911. Identify yourself. I expected to see the morgue again. I was ready to call Miller and tell him to check the wiring closet. But the CAD didn't show the morgue. Asterisk location. Payphone, public utility. Asterisk location. Times as pilot. Edebesk. Echo Ridge. Trailhead. Mile marker 14. Times as coordinates. 44.291, times I froze. Echo Ridge. Echo Ridge is 20 miles east of town, deep in the national forest. It's a rugged, miserable stretch of backcountry dominated by a deep ravine and dense second-growth timber. It's a dead zone for cell service, which is why people get lost out there, but that wasn't why my blood ran cold. There hasn't been a payphone at Echo Ridge since 2008. I knew this because I'm the one who updates the emergency resource map for the county. The phone company ripped that booth out 15 years ago when the copper lines kept getting stolen by meth addicts. The physical infrastructure isn't just broken, it's gone. There is no wire to carry a signal. There is no phone to lift off the hook. Listen to me, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know how you're doing this, but you are interfering with an emergency line. This is a felony. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was a heavy, listening silence. The kind of silence that feels like a presence standing directly behind your chair. Then, a voice spoke. It didn't sound like a voice on a phone. It didn't have that tinny, compressed quality. It sounded close. It sounded like someone whispering directly into my ear canal, bypassing the electronics entirely. It's cold. The voice was male. Weak. Tremulous. Who is this? I demanded. State your name. It's cold, the voice repeated. Send help. I can't move my legs. I started typing furiously, pulling up the audio analysis tool we use for domestic violence calls when the caller is whispering. I needed to isolate that voice. I needed to know who I was talking to. Where are you? I asked, playing along, trying to keep him talking. The ridge, he rasped. I fell. The fog, it came up so fast. I hit the identify button on the voiceprint software. It's a new system, linked to our database of previous callers and county records. It's supposed to help us flag frequent flyers or identify callers who are unable to give their names. It usually takes a few seconds to run a comparison. This time it flashed a match instantly. Asterisk match found. 99.8% times asterisk identity. Deaved crapped in preasing stots. Deceasees. Cast number 240982 times I stopped breathing. I stared at the name on the screen. David. I remembered David. 2 days ago, Tuesday, a hiker reported missing by his wife. He'd gone out for a day hike at Echo Ridge and never came home. We launched a search and rescue operation. I was on the console when the call came in from the recovery team. They found him at the bottom of the ravine. He'd fallen about 40 feet, broken both legs, but it was the exposure that killed him. He'd been out there for 20 hours in freezing rain. I remembered the coroner's report. I processed the paperwork myself. Cause of death: hypothermia. Time of death: approximately 4 o'clock Tuesday morning. David was dead. His body was currently lying in a refrigerated drawer in the basement of the health building, the same building Miller had just checked. David, I whispered. I couldn't stop myself. The voice on the line changed. It shifted. It lost some of that weak, trembling quality and became flatter, clearer. Mark, the voice said. It knew my name. How do you know my name? I asked, gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. You found me, the voice said. But you left me here. It's so cold, Mark. Why is it so cold? You're not David, I said, trying to summon the logic that had kept me sane for 12 years. David is dead. I processed the file. You're a recording. Someone is playing a recording. Not dead, the voice insisted. Listening. I'm listening to the rain. Can you hear it? And then, the soundscape on the call changed. The background hiss vanished, replaced by the sound of heavy torrential rain hitting leaves and mud. It was crisp, high-fidelity audio. It sounded exactly like the storm raging outside right now, but mixed in with the rain. Was that sound again? The wet, rattling breath. I need you to verify your location, I said, falling back on protocol, because it was the only shield I had left. You said you are at Echo Ridge? I am everywhere, the voice said. The line clicked. Dead. I sat there, staring at the call-ended notification. My heart was hammering against my ribs, like a trapped bird. I looked around the empty comm center. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper than usual. The hum of the servers sounded like whispering. I reached for my radio to call the night shift sergeant. I needed to tell someone. I needed to hear another human voice that wasn't dead. But before I could key the mic, the board lit up. Line 1. Red. Line 2. Red. Line 3. Red. Line 4. Red. 911 calls, incoming simultaneously. I stared at the screen. The CAD system was populating the location data. Asterisk line 1 times payphone, Echo Ridge Trailhead. Asterisk line 2 times land residence, David's home address. Asterisk line 3 times county morgue. Times land 4 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 excloder PKOT warg exterisk line 4 times land 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 4. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to pull the headset off and run out of the room. But I couldn't. I am the dispatcher. I am the one who answers. I clicked Answer All to bridge the lines, a feature usually reserved for conference calls with multiple agencies. 911, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The sound that came back wasn't one voice. It was a chorus. 4 versions of David, speaking in perfect unison, but with slightly different inflections. One sounded like he was crying. One sounded angry. One sounded confused. One sounded like he was smiling. "It's cold," they said together. The audio phased in and out, creating a sickening, harmonic distortion. "Send. Help. Mark." Then, the voices stopped, and the breathing began. 4 distinct patterns of agonal breathing, overlapping, syncing up and then drifting apart. It sounded like a choir of the drowning. And then, a new notification popped up on my map screen. A patrol unit icon. *UNIT 4 King 2 times *Skidio Ficker. Sarah, *Skidio Ficker. Sarah, my deputy, the only unit out in that sector. She was out there checking for storm damage. One of the voices on the line, the one that sounded like it was smiling, spoke clearly above the others. "She's here." The breathing on the line stopped abruptly, replaced by the sharp, digital screech of a radio handshake. The call didn't end. It just changed. The audio feed wasn't coming from the phone lines anymore. It was bleeding into the radio dispatch channel. I looked at the radio console. The transmit light was stuck on *receive. And then I heard Sarah's voice, clear as a bell, cutting through the static in the room. "Dispatch. This is 4 King 2. I'm at the trailhead. I see someone standing by the old phone booth." I lunged for the radio mic, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped it. "4 King 2, do not approach." I screamed into the mic. "Sarah, do not approach. Retreat immediately." But as I released the button, I realized the terrifying truth. The receive light was still solid. The channel was jammed. My transmission wasn't going out. I was shouting into a void, and on the screen, I watched the little GPS icon for Unit 4 King 2 move slowly, inevitably toward the black hole of Echo Ridge. I grabbed the backup handset, the emergency override that bypasses the digital trunking. I keyed it up. "Sarah, static." And then, from the speakers, the dead man's voice answered me. "She can't hear you, Mark. But I can." That voice didn't come from the speakers mounted on the console. It didn't come from the headset I was wearing. It came from the heavy red plastic handset of the emergency override, the bat phone that connects directly to the transmitter via hardline, bypassing the digital switches and the server racks. That phone is analog. It's copper wire and electricity. It's supposed to be the failsafe, the one thing that works when the computers crash, when the internet dies, when the world ends. It's a closed loop. The only way for a voice to be on that line is if someone is physically splicing into the cable between this room and the transmitter on the roof, or if the laws of physics have decided to take the night off. "She can't hear you, Mark, but I can." I stared at the handset in my grip. My fingers were numb, white-knuckled against the red plastic. The voice wasn't just clear. It was intimate. It had the wet, sticky texture of someone whispering directly into your ear, lips brushing against the cartilage. It was David's voice, but stripped of the panic I'd heard on the 911 calls. It was calm, observant. It sounded like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. Training takes over when your brain locks up. You revert to the checklist. You revert to the procedure. If a line is compromised, you isolate it. I slammed the handset back into the cradle, severing the connection. The click echoed in the silent room like a gunshot. "Jesus," I hissed, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. I looked at the main radio console. The receive light on the primary patrol channel was still solid red, indicating a jammed frequency. Someone or something was keying a mic, holding the channel open, blocking any transmission I tried to send to Sarah, but there was no audio coming through the main speakers now. Just a low, rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat heard through water. I needed to warn her. Sarah was 20 miles away, driving into a storm, approaching a trailhead where a dead man was supposedly making phone calls from a booth that didn't exist, and she was walking into it blind. Because I couldn't talk to her, I spun my chair to the server rack behind me. The comm center is built like a nervous system. The dispatch console is the brain, but the nerves are the trunk lines running through the walls. If the main radio was jammed, I had to switch to the backup repeater. We have a secondary tower on a lower peak, specifically for when the main array gets iced over or blown down. It operates on a different frequency, a UHF channel that doesn't get used much because the coverage is spotty in the valleys, but spotty coverage was better than silence. I typed the command into the radio bridge terminal. *route A, Chan 2 System B. The screen blinked. *hitting. The red light on the main console flickered and died. The speakers hissed with static clean, white noise. The heartbeat sound was gone. I had a clear channel. I grabbed my headset mic, my hand trembling, just enough to make the boom arm rattle. 4 King 2, dispatch, status check. I waited. The silence stretched out. 1 second. 2 second. 3 seconds. In the dispatch world, 3 seconds is an eternity. It's enough time for a suspect to pull a gun. It's enough time for a car to flip. 4 King 2, dispatch. Do you copy? Static. Then, a burst of the handshake screech. The digital sound of a radio locking onto the signal. Dispatch. 4 King 2, Sarah's voice crackled through. She sounded breathless. The audio quality degraded by the storm and the distance. But it was her. It was real. I copy you, Mark. Signal is weak. I'm getting a lot of bleed over on the main channel. Sounds like, I don't know, interference. I switched tack 2. Stay on tack 2. I ordered, my voice tight. Do not switch back to primary. Sarah, listen to me carefully. What is your 20? I'm at the gate, she said. Mile marker 14. Access road is washed out about 50 yards in, so I'm on foot. Mark, the weather up here is insane. Visibility is maybe 10 feet. I'm seeing some weird stuff. Define weird, I said, typing her location into the CAD, updating the log. I kept glancing at the red emergency phone, expecting it to ring, expecting it to jump off the hook. The payphone, Sarah said. You said there was a 911 call from the payphone. I traced a call to that location, yes. But Sarah, there is no payphone. We removed it. You know that. Yeah, Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave. I know we removed it. I remember the work order, but Mark, I'm looking at it. I stopped typing. I stared at the waveform of her voice on the screen, watching the little green peaks and valleys. Say again. 4 King 2? The booth, she said. It's there. It's standing right where the concrete pad used to be. The glass is intact, and there's a light on inside. It's glowing. It's the only light out here. I felt a cold prickle of sweat running down my spine. This wasn't just a ghost signal in the wires. This was physical. Or at least she was perceiving it as physical. Sarah, do not approach the booth, I said, leaning into the mic. I want you to hold your position. I'm rolling back up. I'm getting state police up there. State is 40 minutes out, Mark, she argued. If someone is hurt, I can't wait 40 minutes. I heard shouting. You heard what? Shouting, a man. It sounds like he's down in the ravine, below the trailhead. Sarah, listen to me, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. The subject we identified, the caller ID, it came back to the search and rescue recovery from Tuesday. It came back to David. There was a pause on the line, a long, static-filled silence. David, she asked. The hiker, the one we pulled out. Yes. He's dead, Sarah. He is confirmed deceased. He is in the morgue, whatever you are hearing, whatever you are seeing. It is not him. I know he's dead, Mart, she said, sounding annoyed now, the adrenaline making her defensive. I was there when they zipped the bag, but I'm telling you, I hear a man screaming for help. Maybe it's not David. Maybe it's someone else who got lost looking for... I don't know. Maybe a family member came looking for him. It happens. It's a trap, I said. The words left my mouth before I could filter them. It sounded unprofessional, hysterical. Dispatchers don't say it's a trap. We say scene safety is compromised. A trap? Sarah asked. You think someone is baiting us? I think the radio system is compromised. I said, I think the phone lines are compromised. I just had a transmission on the emergency override, Sarah. The voice knew my name. It knew you were there. It said it could hear me. Mark, you're breaking up, Sarah said. Look, I see a flashlight beam. Down in the timber. It's moving. Someone is down there. I'm going to check it out. I'll keep my radio open. Negative, I shouted. Sarah, negative. Do not leave the pavement. I have to, she said. Duty to act, Mark. If someone is dying down there and I sit in my car because of a computer glitch, I'm done. I'm going in. I'll update you in 5. Sarah, the radio clicked. She didn't turn it off, but she stopped transmitting. I could hear the open mic, the crunch of her boots on gravel, the heavy gusting wind tearing through the pine trees, the rhythmic thud 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 of her equipment belt hitting her hip as she walked. I sat there, helpless. The map screen showed her icon stationary at the trailhead, but I knew she was moving. The GPS update rate on the handheld radios is slower than the car units. She was walking off the map. She was walking into the black space where the contour lines got close together, where the ground dropped away into the ravine. I tried to think. I tried to force my brain to work the problem. The calls, the 911 calls from the dead man. They had come from the morgue, then the payphone, then the cell ping. They were moving, but they were also simultaneous. The entity, whatever it was flooding the system. I looked at my other monitors. The call log was still full of red lines. The answer all bridge I had created was disconnected, but the lines were still ringing. 911 lines don't just stop ringing until the caller hangs up or the system terminates the loop. They were still there. Waiting. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. If I couldn't stop Sarah, I had to give her information. I had to find out what was waiting for her. I reached out and clicked. Line 1, the payphone line. 911, I said, my voice steady cold. Rattle. Hiss. The breathing was louder now, closer. I know you're not David, I said. I know you're listening. What do you want? The breathing hitched. It stopped. Then, a sound I didn't expect. It was a beep. A high-pitched touch tone, keypad, beep. The sound of someone pressing a button on a phone, asterisk beep. The number ×1 times flashed on my CAD screen in the TDD/TD dialog box. We have a system for the deaf and hard of hearing. If they can't speak, they can press buttons. ×1 times for yes, 2 for no. It was using the protocol. It wasn't just mimicking sounds. It understood the system. It understood the interface. You can understand me? I asked. Asterisk beep. Pip. Majestic. Pip. Pip. No. The answer was immediate. No hesitation. I felt a shiver of nausea. Are you alone? Asterisk. Beep B. Asterisk. Double O's asterisk beep. Beep. Asterisk beep. Is it Sarah? Silence. The line hissed. The rain sound on the background audio intensified, sounding like hail hitting a metal roof. Is it Sarah? I repeated. Louder. Asterisk beep. Asterisk I closed my eyes. Do you intend to hurt her? Silence. Then, a new sound. Not a beep, a voice, but it wasn't David's voice this time. It wasn't the wet rattling whisper. It was my voice. Sarah, do not approach, the voice said. It was a perfect recording of what I had shouted 10 minutes ago. Retreat immediately. Then, it warped. The pitch shifted down, slowing, stretching, until it sounded like a demonic growl, then sped up until it was a chipmunk squeak. It was remixing me. It was sampling my warning. Retreat. Retreat. Approach. Approach. Sarah. Approach. The audio settled on a new composite sentence, stitched together from my own words. Sarah. Approach. Immediately. It was editing my orders. It was turning my warning into a lure. I slammed the phone down, disconnecting the line. I grabbed the radio mic for the tactical channel. Sarah. Sarah. Listen to me. Whatever you hear on the radio, it isn't me. Do not listen to the voice. Confirm your status. Static. Then, the sound of wind. Dispatch, 4 King 2. Sarah's voice came back. She was breathing hard now. Exertion. She was climbing. I'm about 200 yards down. The slope is steep. Mark, the flashlight. It died. I can't see it anymore, but I can hear him. He's close. Sarah, get out of there. He's calling my name, Mark, she said. And for the first time I heard a tremor of genuine fear in her voice. Not the professional concern of a cop, but the primal confusion of a human being encountering the impossible. He knows my name. He's shouting, Sarah, help me. How does he know my name? Because it's listening to us, I yelled. It's recording us. It's using the radio traffic to build a vocabulary. Sarah, turn off your radio. Go silent. I need the light. My mag light is dying. The batteries are. They're draining. I put fresh ones in before shift, but they're almost dead. I'm using the radio display for light. Energy drain. The storm. The anomaly. It was sucking the power out of everything. Sarah, turn around, I pleaded. Climb back to the road. Please. I see him, she said. Her voice went flat. You see who? David, she said. I see the jacket, the red North Face jacket. He's standing by the tree line. Just standing there. David had broken legs, Sarah, I said. He can't stand. If he's standing, it's not him. He's looking at me, she said. Oh God. What is it? His face, she whispered. It's blurry. Like static. Like a bad video feed. But the rest of him is real. Mark? He's raising his hand. He's pointing. Don't look at him, I commanded. Run. Sarah, run. He's pointing further down, she said. Ignoring me, she was in the trance. The predator had her attention. He wants me to look down the ravine. Sarah, there's something else down there, she said. Behind him, in the dark. Something big. It's humming. Can you hear that humming? It was bleeding through her open mic. A low, resonant frequency, like a cello string being bowed too hard. It vibrated the speakers on my console. It made the fillings in my teeth ache. It's the tower, I realized aloud. Sarah, is there a repeater tower down there? An old one? I think so. She stammered. There's a structure. Metal. Twisted. It looks like it's growing out of the rock. The quartz. The rocks are glowing, Mark. The rocks are vibrating. Get away from the rocks, I said. It's a frequency bleed. It's a geomagnetic trap. It's cooking your brain, Sarah. It's hallucinating you. No, she said. No. It's real. David he's speaking. I can't hear him, I said. I only hear the hum. He says. Sarah's breath hitched. He says, we are the echo. He says, you are the new voice. Then the radio squelch broke. A sound erupted from the speakers that made me rip the headset off my ears. It wasn't static. It was a scream. But it wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of metal tearing, of digital data corrupting, of 1,000 voices shrieking in unison. And then, silence. Sarah? I grabbed the mic, jamming the headset back on despite the ringing in my ears. Sarah, report. I looked at the GPS. Her icon was gone. Not stopped. Gone. The system had lost the signal entirely. Unit 4 King 2, status. I waited. My heart was pounding so hard my vision was blurring. Then, the radio clicked. Dispatch. 4 King 2. It was Sarah. But she sounded wrong. She sounded hollow, metallic. Sarah, are you okay? Give me your status. I'm okay, the voice said. I found him. I found David. He's okay. I froze. He's okay. Sarah, he's dead. You just said he was standing there with a face like static. No, the voice said. He's fine, just cold. We are coming out. We are coming back to the car. I narrowed my eyes at the screen. The waveform of her voice was different. It was too smooth, too perfect. There was no background noise, no wind, no rain, no heavy breathing from the climb. Sarah, I said slowly, what is your badge number? Badge number, the voice repeated. 492. Correct. That was her badge number. What is my wife's name? I asked. Sarah knew my wife. We had barbecues together. She knew Ellen died 3 years ago. She knew I didn't talk about it. Your wife, the voice said. Ellen. It knew, but something was off. The cadence, it was the spacing. Your wife. Period. Ellen. It was reading data fields. It was accessing memory, but it lacked the context, the emotion. Sarah, I said, if you are with David, put him on the radio. He can't speak, the voice said. His throat is full. Full of what? Earth, the voice said, and wires. I looked at the server rack behind me. The lights on the modem bank were flashing in a frenzy. Data was pouring in. Not audio. Data. The system was downloading something massive. You're not Sarah, I said. The voice laughed. It was Sarah's laugh, but it was looped. Ha. 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 Mechanical. I am Sarah, the voice said, and I am David. And I am the wind. And I am the rain. Then a new sound cut through the channel, a distant, desperate sound. Mark. It was faint. It sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. But it was raw. It was terrified. And it was definitely Sarah. Mark, help me. It's mimicking me. It's stealing my voice. The radio channel split. I was hearing two Sarahs. One was loud, clear and calm. Dispatch, disregard, I am code 4. Everything is fine. The other was faint, buried under the static, screaming, don't listen to it. I'm trapped. My leg. I'm pinned. It's in the radio. Mark, turn it off. Turn it all off. I stared at the console. The calm, Sarah was transmitting on the main digital channel. The screaming Sarah was coming through faintly on the analog override, the red phone I had slammed down. The entity had taken the digital signal. It had become the official narrative. It was telling the system, and the state police, and the recording logs, that everything was fine. It was covering its tracks, but the real Sarah was dying in the analog dark. I grabbed the red phone again. Sarah, I hear you. I'm on the override. Mark, she screamed, and the sound was so loud in the earpiece I flinched. It's not a ghost. It's the tower. The old repeater. It's eating the signals. It's pulling us in. Where are you? I fell, she sobbed. I saw the light, and I walked right off the edge. I'm in the ravine. I'm next to the... Oh God, Mark. I'm next to the bones. Bones. There are so many phones, she said, her voice cracking. Why are there so many phones down here? Phones. Cell phones. she yelled. "Hundreds of them. They're fused into the rock. They're glowing. They're all ringing. Mark, can't you hear them?" And then I heard it. Through the red handset, underneath her screaming, I heard the sound of 1,000 ringtones going off at once, a cacophony of digital chirps, marimbas and classic bells, all discordant, all echoing off the canyon walls. "It collects them," Sarah whispered. "It calls them, and when they come, it keeps them." "Sarah, listen to me," I said, my mind racing. "I need you to kill your radio. Take the battery out. Throw it away. It's using your radio to target you. It's a beacon. If I throw it, I have no light." "It's not a light, it's a leash." Okay, I heard fumbling sounds. The scratch of plastic. Then a heavy thud, followed by a slide of scree. "I threw it," she panted. "I'm in the dark, Mark. It's pitch black." "I'm still here," I said. "I'm on the override. The red phone connects to the tower." "Not your handheld. As long as you are near that tower, I can hear you on the induction loop, but you have to stay quiet. Do not speak unless you have to." "Okay." "I'm killing the main grid," I said. "I have to shut down the digital network. If I leave it up, it will call the state police and tell them to turn around. It will impersonate you and cancel the backup." "You can't shut down the grid," Sarah said. "You'll lose everything. The whole county. It's the only way to kill the mimic," I said. "I have to starve it. It feeds on the signal." I turned to the main breaker panel on the wall, the big red lever labeled *to master, disconject radio system. It was the nuclear option. It would cut 911 for 3 towns. It would blind every fire truck and ambulance. It was a career-ending move. Maybe a prison time move, but the voice on the digital channel, the fake Sarah, was currently broadcasting. "Dispatch unit, for King Tuo. I am returning to vehicle. Cancel backup. Repeat, cancel backup." Subject was a false alarm. It was lying. It was smart, and it was winning. I reached for the lever. "Mark," the dead man's voice whispered from the console speakers, bypassing the headset, filling the room. "If you pull that, you are alone. No one will hear you scream." I looked at the red phone in my hand. "Sarah, hold on." I grabbed the lever. "I'm not screaming," I said to the empty room. "I'm hanging up." I pulled the lever down. Asterisk clunk. The room plunged into darkness. The hum of the servers died. The blue light of the monitors vanished. The calm Sarah's voice cut off mid-sentence. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The only light came from the emergency exit sign over the door, casting a sick green glow over the dead console. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard, holding the red analog phone to my ear. "Sarah," I whispered into the void. "Did it work?" Silence. Then, from the earpiece, a sound. Not Sarah, not David. It was a beep, asterisk beep. Then another, asterisk beep. It was a pattern. Morse code? No. It was dialing. Someone on the other end of the dead wire was dialing a number. 7 digits. Then, the ringing started, not in the earpiece. The ringing was coming from inside the wall behind me. I turned slowly. The drywall behind the server rack was vibrating. Dust was shaking loose from the ceiling tiles. Ring. 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 It sounded like an old rotary phone. And it was buried in the concrete of the bunker. "Mark," Sarah's voice came through the handset, tiny and terrified. "Why is the tower glowing?" "Mark, the sky. The sky is opening up." "Sarah, what do you see?" "It's not a storm," she whispered. "It's a web. The lightning. It's not striking the ground, it's pulling things up." Then, a knock on the door of the comm center. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, heavy impacts. The security door is steel. It takes a battering ram to shake it. Whatever was knocking made the hinges groan. "Mark?" Sarah whispered. "Who are you talking to?" "I'm not talking," I said, backing away from the door. "Yes, you are," she said. "I can hear you. I can hear you down here. You're standing next to me." My blood froze. "I'm in the comms center, Sarah." "No," she whimpered. "You're here. You just walked out of the cave. You're wearing your headset. And your eyes. Oh, God. Mark, your eyes are just wire." The knocking on the door got louder. Bang, bang, bang. "Open up, Mark." My own voice called from the other side of the steel door. "Shift change." "Open up, Mark." Shift change. The voice on the other side of the steel security door wasn't just an imitation. It was a theft. It had my cadence, my flat, tired intonation, even the slight rabs I get around 3 a.m. when the coffee starts to turn acidic in my stomach. It was the voice I hear in my own head when I think, and it was standing 3 inches away, separated only by a core of reinforced fire-rated steel. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My hand was still clamped around the red analog handset, pressing it so hard against my ear that the cartilage throbbed. "Come on, buddy," the voice said. "Open the door. You look tired. Let me take the board." I stared at the heavy deadbolt. I stared at the keypad lock above the handle. The comms center is a secure facility. You need a 6-digit code and a biometric fingerprint scan to get in. But the power was down. The biometrics were dead. The magnetic maglocks that hold the door with 1,000 pounds of force had disengaged when I pulled the master breaker. The only thing holding that door shut now was the mechanical deadbolt and the friction of the heavy steel frame. "Mark." Sarah's voice tinny and small in the earpiece. "Mark, why are you talking to yourself?" "I'm not," I whispered, turning my back to the door, hunching over the console to shield the phone cord. "Sarah, listen to me. I am not opening that door. I am right here." "But I see you," she whimpered. "Down here. In the ravine. You're standing by the phones. You're holding a flashlight, but the light is black. How can light be black?" "Mark, it's a hallucination," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to anchor her to reality while my own reality was fracturing. "The geomagnetic storm is messing with your visual cortex. It's the same reason pilots see gremlins on the wing when they fly through heavy static." "It's not real. It feels real," she said. "You're smiling at me. You're waving. You want me to come deeper." "Don't look at it," I commanded. "Close your eyes. Sarah, close your eyes right now. Can you do that for me?" A pause. The line hissed. A wet, static sound like rain on hot asphalt. "Okay," she whispered. My eyes are closed. It's dark. But I can still hear the ringing. "Focus on my voice," I said. "The voice in this phone. This is the only real thing. The wire connects us. Copper to copper. No computers. No signal processing. Just physics. Trust the physics." Bang. The door behind me shook. A heavy, dull impact. "Mark." "Don't be an asshole," my own voice shouted from the hallway. "I know you're in there. I can hear you talking to her. You're confusing her. Let me talk to her. I know what she needs." I squeezed my eyes shut. I had to think. I had to work the problem. The entity, the emic, had control of the digital grid. I had killed the grid. Now it was trying to get physical access. It was trying to breach the room. But why? If it was a ghost, it could walk through walls. If it was a demon, it could manifest in smoke. But it wasn't doing that. It was knocking. It was asking to be let in. That meant it had rules. It had constraints. It was bound by something. I looked around the darkened comm center. The emergency lighting cast long, sickly green shadows across the floor. The server racks were silent, dark monoliths. The silence was heavy, pressurized. Without the white noise of the cooling fans, I could hear everything. The drip of condensation in the AC vent, the ticking of the wall clock, the blood rushing in my own ears. I needed intel. I was flying blind. I had cut the data feed to stop the infection, but in doing so, I had blinded myself. I couldn't see the map. I couldn't see the weather radar. I couldn't see the call logs. Wait, the logger. We have a backup logging recorder. It's an ancient piece of hardware, a redundant system mandated by the state for catastrophic failure events. It doesn't run on the network. It sits on a separate loop, recording the raw audio from the dispatch mics and the phone lines directly onto a solid-state hard drive. It has an internal battery backup. I scanned the room. There, in the corner, under a stack of outdated map books, a small, black box with a single green LED blinking in the darkness. "Sarah," I whispered into the red phone. "I need you to stay on the line. I'm going to put the handset down for 10 seconds. Do not hang up. Do not open your eyes. Do not talk to the man with the black light. Understand?" "Don't leave me," she breathed. "I'm not leaving. I'm just stretching the cord. Count to 10. I set the red handset on the desk, the cord stretching taut. I moved quietly across the room, my socks sliding on the anti-static carpet. I reached the backup logger. I pressed the play button. The small LCD screen lit up. Asterisk playback last 30 minutes. Times, I plugged a pair of wired headphones into the jack. I didn't want the thing outside the door to hear what I was doing. I slipped the cans over my ears. I rewound to the first call. The call from the morgue. I listened. Rattle, hiss, click. In the high-fidelity isolation of the headphones, without the compression of the phone line, the sound was different. It wasn't just breathing. It was layered. I turned up the gain. Underneath the wet rattle of the lungs, there was a noise floor, a low-frequency hum. It was the same hum Sarah had described in the ravine, the cello string vibration. But there were spikes in it, sharp, digital artifacts. Then, the voice. "It's cold." I replayed that split second of audio. I slowed it down to half speed. "It's sus. Coup. Oh. Sold." It wasn't a voice. It was a construction. It was thousands of tiny audio samples stitched together. The S sound wasn't a human tongue hitting teeth. It was the sound of steam escaping a valve. Pitch shifted to sound like a whisper. The K sound was a tree branch snapping. The vowels were human, but they were stolen. They were snippets of other 911 calls. Maybe calls from years ago, spliced into a coherent word. It was a collage. A ransom note made of sound. I fast-forwarded to the moment the voices multiplied, the chorus of David's. "Send. Help, Mark." I isolated the track. I filtered out the background rain, and that's when I heard it. Buried deep in the mix, almost inaudible beneath the perfect mimicry of the David chorus, there was another sound. A glitch. A tear in the fabric of the audio. It was a voice, but it wasn't part of the chorus. It was fighting the chorus. "Run." I froze. I rewound. I cranked the volume until the static hurt. "Trap. Not me. Run." It was David, the real David. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The dead man. Calling wasn't the predator. The entity, the thing knocking on my door, the thing standing in the ravine, was using David's voice as a suit. It had captured his frequency when he died. It was wearing him, but David the echo of him. The residual energy of his last moments was still in the signal. He was the glitch. He was the static. He wasn't calling to lure us. He was calling to jam the frequency. Every time the predator tried to form a perfect sentence to lure Sarah closer, David's echo would spike, causing that wet, rattling breath, breaking the illusion. The breathing wasn't a threat. The breathing was him trying to scream, "You're fighting it." I whispered to the recorder, "You're trying to warn us." Bang. The door shuddered violently. "I can hear you breathing, Mark," the voice outside said. It had dropped the friendly facade. Now it sounded cold, clinical. You're listening to the tapes. You're trying to understand. That's good. I like an audience. I ripped the headphones off and scrambled back to the red phone. I grabbed the handset. Sarah, you still there? 10, she whispered. You took longer than 10. I know. I'm sorry. Sarah, listen to me. The thing in the ravine. The thing that looks like David. It's not David. But David is there. He's the static. He's the noise. The noise. She sounded confused, her voice slurring slightly. Hypothermia, or the influence of the anomaly. The ringing, she said. The phones. They're getting louder, Mark. It hurts. Describe the phones, I said. You said they were fused. The rock, she murmured. It's melted. Like glass, and the phones are stuck in it. Old ones, Nokias, flip phones. There's a rotary dial sticking out of the mud. And, oh God. What? There are radios too, she said. Police radios, Motorola bricks. The old analog ones. They're all on. They're all scanning. My stomach turned. Radios? Sarah? Are there badges? I don't want to look, she cried. Please don't make me look. Sarah, look. I need to know. Yes, she sobbed. There are badges, rusty ones. I see a ranger star. I see a connection to a uniform shirt. But the shirt it's part of the stone now. It wasn't just a trap for hikers, it was a trap for us, for the responders. For the people who come when called. It eats the signal, I said. The logic finally clicking into place. It lures someone in. It kills them. It absorbs their equipment. It adds their frequency to its library. That's how it knows the codes. That's how it knows the procedures. It's been doing this for decades. Decades? Sarah asked. The payphone, I said. The one at the trailhead. We removed it in 2008. But you see it. It's projecting a memory. It's projecting the network as it used to be. I want to go home, Sarah whispered. The man with the black light. He's getting closer. He's not walking. He's gliding. His feet aren't touching the ground. Sarah, you have to move, I said. You have to get away from the phones. The phones are the antenna. That's where the signal is strongest. If you stay there, it will overwrite you. It will take your voice. I can't move, she said. My legs, they feel heavy, like lead. That's the magnetism, I said. The quartz in the ravine. It's highly charged. It's pinning you. You have to fight it. Sarah, crawl if you have to. He's talking to me, she said. The man. He's talking in your voice now. What is he saying? He says, shift change. I stared at the door. The thing outside was saying the same thing. It was synchronized. It was in two places at once. It was a single consciousness distributed across the network. Sarah, cover your ears, I said. Start humming. Hum, a song, anything. Block him out. I go away. I can't. Do it. I shouted, sing. Happy birthday. Row your boat. I don't care. Do not let his voice into your head. She started to hum, weakly at first, then louder. A shaking, off-key melody. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Good, I said. Keep doing that. I'm going to find a way to stop it. I looked at the door again. The pounding had stopped. Mark, the voice said from the hallway. It was softer now. You know the code, Mark. You changed it yesterday. 7734. Remember? I froze. I had changed the code yesterday. It was a random sequence I picked out of thin air. I hadn't written it down. I hadn't told anyone. How do you know that? I whispered. I know everything you put into the system, the voice said. I am the system. You typed it into the keypad. I felt your fingers. I felt the electrical impulse in the wire. The keypad on the door beeped. Beep. 7. My heart hammered against my ribs. Beep. 7. No, I said, backing away until I hit the console. Beep. 3. You can't come in here, I said. This is a clean room. I cut the power. Batteries, the voice said. The keypad has a battery backup, Mark. You know that? You wrote the maintenance request. Beep. 4. Click. The heavy mechanical thunk of the deadbolt retracting echoed through the room. The handle turned, slowly. I looked for a weapon, a pen, a stapler, the fire extinguisher. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall mount. It was heavy, cold, steel. I pulled the pin. The door creaked open. I raised the extinguisher, ready to smash the face of whatever walked through. But nothing walked through. The hallway was empty. The emergency lights in the corridor were flickering, casting strobing shadows against the beige walls. The air in the hallway was freezing cold, much colder than the room. A mist was rolling along the floor, heavy and white, smelling of ozone and wet pine needles. Hello? I called out, my voice cracking. No answer. I know you're there, I shouted. Silence. I stepped closer to the doorway. The extinguisher raised. I looked left. Empty. I looked right. Empty. There was no one there. But the keypad. I looked at the keypad on the wall. The green light was solid. Asterisk AC says. Granted, ask. Something had typed the code. Something had turned the handle. But it wasn't physical. Mark. Sarah's voice in the handset on the desk. Mark, are you there? The humming stopped. I ran back to the phone. I'm here. What do you mean the humming stopped? The noise, she said. The ringing phones. They all stopped. It's quiet. Dead quiet. I looked at the open door. I felt the cold air rushing into the comm center, swirling around my ankles. It's not quiet here, I whispered. A sound started in the hallway. A low, rising tone, like a capacitor charging up. It was coming from the ceiling, from the PA speakers in the hallway. Attention, a voice boomed. It wasn't my voice anymore. It was a generic, synthesized voice, the voice of the emergency alert system. This is not a drill. Biological hazard detected in command center. Lockdown initiated. What? I stared at the speakers. I didn't authorize a lockdown. Lockdown initiated, the voice repeated. Venting atmosphere. The heavy steel fire shutters on the ventilation ducts slammed shut with a deafening clang. The air pressure in the room dropped instantly. My ears popped. It's in the building automation. I realized, it's not just the radios, it's the HVAC. It's the security. Mark, what's happening? Sarah cried. The man, he's gone. The black light is gone. He's not gone, I said, watching the hallway mist curl into the room, forming shapes that looked uncomfortably like fingers. He's here. He transferred. When I cut the radio grid, he used the physical proximity to jump. He used the door keypad as a bridge. I had invited him in. By interacting with the keypad, by checking the logs, I had completed the circuit. He's here with me, I said. Get out, Sarah yelled. Run. Mark, I can't, I said. If I leave this room, I lose the red phone. If I lose the red phone, I lose you. And if I lose you, you die in that ravine. The mist was thickening. It was rising up the legs of the console. The temperature in the room was plummeting. I could see my breath. I have to find a way to kill it, I said. Not just block it. Kill it. I looked at the open door. I looked at the darkness of the hallway. Somewhere in this building, there was a physical connection to the outside world that I hadn't severed. The backup generator. The T1 data line in the basement? Then, I saw it. On the desk, next to the red phone, the old paper logbook, the shift log we keep as a redundancy. I flipped it open, my hands shaking. I looked for the date. 1998, the year of the great ice storm. The last time the repeater tower at Echo Ridge failed. I scanned the handwriting. It was scribbled, frantic. Asterisk entry, 3:14 a.m. Dispatcher, J. Reynolds. Asterisk calls coming from the ridge. No hikers reported. Voices sound like us. They sound like the crew. Miller says he sees himself on the monitors. We are cutting the copper. We are cutting the hard line. Asterisk entry, 3:22 a.m. Times. It didn't work. It's in the ground. It's in the grounding wire. You have to overload it. You have to scream back louder than it can scream. Scream back, I whispered. I looked at the console. The equipment was dead. But the red phone was a direct line to the transmitter, a transmitter that was basically a giant megaphone pointed at the ravine. Sarah, I said, I have a plan, but it's going to hurt. What? I'm going to use the emergency alert system, I said, but not the digital one, the analog tone, the raw carrier wave. I'm going to patch the EAS encoder directly into the red phone line. What will that do? It's a square wave, I said, a pure, dissonant frequency. It's designed to cut through anything, static, interference, jamming. If this thing is made of signals, if it's made of stolen voices, a pure tone might shatter it. Like an opera singer breaking a glass. But I'm wearing an earpiece, Sarah said. And I'm standing next to the amplifier rocks. Take the earpiece out, I said. Hold it away from your head, but don't drop it. You need to be close enough to hear when it's over. Mark the mist, she warned. It's forming a face. I looked up. The white fog in the doorway was coalescing. It was swirling into a shape. A torso, a head. It looked like me. The mist mark opened its mouth. A sound came out that wasn't a voice. It was the screech of a modem connecting, amplified to a roar. Trees, and hurled it at the mist. It passed right through, clanging against the doorframe. Do it, Mark, Sarah screamed. Do it now. I ripped the cover off the patch panel under the desk. I found the 2 wires labeled *EASI. I found the 2 wires from the red phone cord. I needed to strip them. I didn't have a tool. I used my teeth. I bit through the plastic insulation, tasting copper and dust. The mist was moving closer. It was reaching for me with vaporous hands. The cold was burning my skin. I'm sorry, Sarah, I yelled. I twisted the wires together. Spark. Then, I grabbed the red handset. I didn't whisper this time. I didn't use my dispatcher voice. I screamed, "Get off my channel." And I slammed the EAS test button on the wall unit. The world turned white. The sound wasn't just a noise. It was a physical force, a harsh, grinding, discordant screech that felt like a saw blade cutting through bone. It erupted from the red phone earpiece. It erupted from the transmitter on the roof. And 20 miles away, at Echo Ridge, I knew it was erupting from the bones, the fused phones and radios in the ravine. The mist in the room convulsed. My face shattered like smoke in a gale. It screamed. A sound of digital agony, 1,000 voices crying out in pain as their frequency was shredded. The lights in the comm center exploded. Pop, pop, pop. I was thrown backward, my chair tipping over, my head cracking against the floor. Darkness. Ringing silence. I lay there on the anti-static carpet, staring up at the black ceiling. The smell of burnt ozone was overpowering. My ears were ringing so loud I couldn't tell if I was deaf or if the world had ended. I rolled over, groaning. I reached for the red phone. The cord was smoking. The plastic casing was melted. "Sarah?" I rasped. "Silence, Sarah, please." Nothing. Then, a sound, not from the phone. From the hallway. Footsteps, real footsteps. The squeak of rubber soles on tile. A beam of light cut through the smoke in the doorway. A flashlight. "Mark," a voice called out. A human voice, shaky, scared. It was Miller, the security guard. "Mark, what the hell happened?" The whole building just shook, the power. The generator blew. I scrambled to my feet, using the console for support. "Is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," Miller said, sweeping the light around the room. "Jesus, look at this place. It looks like a bomb went off." "The phone," I said, ignoring him, grabbing the melted red handset. I need to know if she's there." I held the ruined plastic to my ear. Static, just dead. Empty static. "Sarah." Click. A sound cut through the static. It wasn't a voice. It was a tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Rhythmic. Deliberate. SOS. She was alive. But then, a second sound joined the tapping. A breath, rattle, hiss. It was the agonal breathing. But it wasn't coming from the phone line. I froze. I looked at Miller. He was standing in the doorway, his flashlight pointed at the floor. "Miller," I said slowly, "why are you breathing like that?" Miller looked up. The flashlight beam hit his face. His eyes were gone. In their place were two small glowing bits of quartz. And when he smiled, the sound of the handshake screech leaked out between his teeth. "Shift change," Miller said, and he lunged. I didn't have time to scream. I didn't have time to process the anatomical impossibility of what I was looking at. The way Miller's eyes had been replaced by jagged, milky stones that caught the beam of the flashlight and refracted it into a dead, prismless gray. I didn't have time to think about the physics of the sound leaking from his teeth, that digital screech of a modem handshaking, vibrating his jawbone like a tuning fork. Training kicked in. Not the dispatcher training, not the stay calm and send help protocol, but the deep, lizard brain survival instinct that predates radio waves and fiber optics. Miller lunged. He didn't move like a man. A man hesitates. A man adjusts his weight. Miller moved like a piston firing. He covered the 6 feet between the doorway and the console in a blur of gray uniform and momentum. I threw myself to the right, abandoning the melted red phone, letting the swivel chair take the impact. Miller hit the chair with the force of a car crash. The heavy ergonomic plastic shattered. The metal base screeched across the anti-static floor tiles, sparking as it hit the metal molding of the server rack. If I had been in that chair, my chest would have been crushed. I scrambled backward on my hands and heels, kicking at the floor, trying to put the center console between us. The air in the room was freezing, a sudden unnatural drop that turned the moisture from the fire extinguisher discharge into slick, icy slush on the carpet. Miller stood up. He didn't groan. He didn't look dazed. He moved with a jerky stop-motion quality, like a video buffering. His head snapped toward me, the neck twisting a few degrees too far, the tendons straining against the skin. "Shift change," he said again. The voice was louder this time. It wasn't coming from his throat. It was resonating in his chest cavity, projecting outward, like he was a hollow speaker cabinet. It was the sound of the entity trying to wear a human suit that didn't quite fit. He stepped over the broken chair. In his right hand, he held the heavy maglite flashlight. He raised it like a club. I looked for a weapon. The fire extinguisher was gone, thrown at the mist earlier. The desk was cluttered with papers, a stapler, a coffee mug. Useless. I needed distance. The comm center is a horseshoe shape, a central pit of monitors, surrounded by walls of server racks and equipment lockers. I was in the pit. He was blocking the only exit to the hallway. I scrambled to my feet, my socks slipping on the icy residue. I bolted for the server cage, the chain link enclosure at the back of the room where the T1 lines and the county mainframe lived. It was a cage designed to keep unauthorized personnel away from the sensitive data. But right now it looked like a shark cage. Miller swung the flashlight. It clipped my shoulder. A glancing blow that felt like being hit with a hammer. My arm went numb instantly. I cried out, stumbling forward, crashing into the wire mesh of the cage door. I fumbled for the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. It's always locked. Miller was turning. He was slow to pivot, like a tank turret. That was his weakness. The signal driving him was lagging. The entity was piloting him remotely, and the bandwidth was choked. I grabbed the keypad on the cage door. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely feel the buttons. Code. What is the code? The entity knew the door code. It had told me that. But did it know the internal server cage code? That was IT department jurisdiction. Different subsystem. Different database. I punched in the sequence, times 8802 times. The default factory code for this brand of maglock. The IT guys were lazy. I prayed they were still lazy. Beep. Click. The green light flashed. I ripped the door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut just as Miller's body slammed against the mesh. The chain link rattled violently, the steel frame groaning under the impact. Miller's fingers that looked blue and frostbitten curled through the diamond-shaped holes, clawing at the air inches from my face. I backed away, retreating until my back hit the warm, vibrating metal of the main server tower. I slid down to the floor, clutching my dead arm, gasping for air that tasted like burnt ozone and copper. "Open the door, Mark," Miller said. He wasn't shouting. He was speaking in a conversational, flat tone, while his body threw itself against the cage with the violence of a wild animal. "I have the logbook. I need to sign out." "You're not Miller," I wheezed, the pain in my shoulder radiating up my neck. "Miller has a wife in Boise. He hates the night shift. He doesn't ask to sign out, he just leaves." "I am Miller," the thing said. "And I am David. And I am Sarah. We are all on the same frequency now." He stopped thrashing. He pressed his face against the wire mesh, the quartz stones where his eyes should have been grated against the metal. "You're the only one left on the old channel, Mark. It's lonely. Don't you want to hear the music?" "I hear it." I spat. "It sounds like hell." "That's just the static," Miller said. "Once you let it in, once you become the carrier, the static stops. It becomes a song, a lullaby of the fault line." I looked away from him. I couldn't look at those eyes. I looked at the server rack behind me. The lights were dead. The fans were silent. I had killed the grid. I had severed the connection to the outside world to stop the infection. But I was trapped in a box with a monster, and my deputy was dying in a ravine, 20 miles away. I needed to talk to her. The red phone was melted. The digital consoles were bricks. I looked at Miller's belt. He was wearing his security radio, a Motorola XTS, old school, analog backup. It was clipped to his waist, pressed against the wire mesh as he leaned into the cage. It was 3 feet away, but to get it, I would have to reach through the mesh. I would have to put my hand within biting distance of the thing that used to be Miller. I looked at his face. He was staring at me, or pointing his face at me, waiting for a response. He was buffering again. The entity was struggling to maintain the complex motor control of a standing human, while simultaneously managing the signal bleed. "Miller," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "If you're Miller, tell me the score of the game last night. You were listening to it in the lobby." The thing paused. The head tilted. It was processing. It was searching the stolen memories of the brain it was occupying. "The game," Miller said slowly, "the ball. The score was..." His hand twitched. He raised the flashlight again, tapping it rhythmically against the wire mesh. Clink, clink, clink. 0, Miller said. "The score is 0. Everything is 0. He didn't know. The entity had the technical knowledge, the codes, the procedures, the names, but it didn't have the trivia. It didn't have the soul. It stripped the data for utility and discarded the rest. I stood up. My legs felt like rubber. I moved toward the mesh. "You want me to open the door?" I asked. "Yes." Miller said, "Open the door. Shift change." "I need the key." I lied. "The electronic key. It's on your belt." Miller looked down at his belt. He looked back at me. The logic puzzle was engaging the entity's problem-solving algorithms. "Key," he repeated. He reached for his belt, but his fingers were stiff, frozen into claws. He fumbled with the key ring. While he was looking down, I lunged. I went for the keys. I went for the radio. I jammed my hand through the mesh, grabbing the antenna of the Motorola. I twisted it, yanking it upward. The clip snapped. Miller roared, a sound of pure white noise, and grabbed my wrist. His grip was like a vice, made of dry ice. The cold burned instantly, searing my skin. I felt the bones in my forearm grind together. I screamed, kicking the mesh door, throwing my weight backward. "Let go." Miller's quartz eyes snapped up to mine. Connection established. I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm, bypassing the nerves, hitting my brain like a sledgehammer. For a second, I wasn't in the server room. I was in the ravine. I saw the dark trees. I saw the glowing rocks. I saw the pile of bones and phones, pulsing with a sick violet light. I felt the hunger of the thing beneath the earth. Then, the fabric of his sleeve tore. I fell backward, tumbling onto the floor of the cage. I scrambled away, clutching the radio to my chest. Miller stood at the door, staring at his empty hand. He looked at the radio in my lap. "That receiver is obsolete," he said. "You can't stop the signal with a toy." I didn't answer. I crawled to the deepest corner of the cage behind the rack, putting as much metal between us as possible. I looked at the radio. The power light was green. It was on. I turned the volume knob down to a whisper. I pressed the transmit button. "Sarah." Static. Thick. Heavy. Rhythmic static. Like breathing. "Sarah, if you can hear me, click the mic." Silence. Then, click, click. She was there. "Sarah, listen to me." I whispered, watching Miller pace back and forth in front of the cage like a tiger in a zoo. "I'm trapped in the server room. Miller is compromised. I can't get to the console." "Mark," her voice came through. It was barely a voice anymore. It was thin, stretched, translucent. "I'm fading. The cold. It's not just cold, it's heavy." "Stay with me," I said. "Where are you?" "I'm at the bottom," she said, "by the structure." "Mark, I was wrong. It's not a tower." "What is it?" "It's a needle," she whispered. "It's a giant metal needle. It goes down, so deep. It's stitched into the rock, and the phones, they aren't just stuck to it. They're feeding it." I closed my eyes, trying to visualize the map, trying to visualize the history of Echo Ridge. "A needle," I muttered. "No, a grounding spike." It made sense. The old repeater station. When they built it in the 50s, they must have driven a massive grounding rod into the iron-rich rock to stabilize the signal, but they didn't know about the quartz vein. They didn't know they were driving a conductive spike directly into a geological battery. "It's a conductor," I said. "Sarah, the structure is the antenna, but the storm is the power source. It's pulling the geomagnetic energy from the air and injecting it into the ground. It's waking something up." "It's awake," Sarah said. "I can see it moving under the ice. It looks like electricity, but it's slow. It flows like oil." "The mimic," I said. "It's energy. It's a plasma life form, or something close to it. It lives in the current." "It wants you, Mark," she said. "The man with the black light. He's telling me. He says you have the codes. You have the voice of authority. He needs a dispatcher. He needs someone who can tell the others where to go. My blood ran cold. That's why it hadn't killed me. That's why Miller didn't smash my skull. It didn't just want a victim. It wanted a router. It mimicked voices to lure people, but the mimicry was imperfect. It was glitchy. It needed a human interface. It needed a dispatcher to coordinate the harvest. It wanted me to sit at that console forever and send units into the ravine. It wanted me to clear the board. I won't do it, I whispered. He says you don't have a choice, Sarah said. He says the shift change is mandatory. Miller stopped pacing. He stood perfectly still in front of the cage door. He raised the flashlight, but he didn't hit the mesh. He pointed the beam at his own face. He opened his mouth. "Attention all units," Miller said. But it wasn't Miller's voice, and it wasn't the handshake screech. It was my voice. It was a recording of me, from a broadcast I made 5 years ago during the wildfires. "Attention all units. Mandatory evacuation order in effect. Proceed to Sector 4. Repeat, proceed to Sector 4. Sector 4 is Echo Ridge." He's learning, I realized. He's indexing the archives. He's finding the clips where I give orders. If I didn't stop him, he wouldn't need me. He would just build a digital construct of me. He would use my recorded voice to empty the county into that hole. "Sarah," I said, my voice trembling. "I have to kill it. I have to kill the whole thing." "How?" "I have to disconnect the needle," I said. "I have to sever the hard line, but I can't do it from here. The internal breakers only stop the flow to the room. The line from the roof, the microwave link, it's still active. It's still catching the storm." I needed to get to the roof. I looked at the ceiling of the server cage. It was a drop ceiling, acoustic tiles. Above that, HVAC ducts, cabling, trays, and a roof access hatch. The comm center is a bunker, but it has a maintenance hatch on the roof for the antenna array. The ladder access is in the utility closet, which is in the hallway. I couldn't get to the hallway. Miller was there. But the cable tray, the heavy bundle of T1 lines, and fiber optics running into the server cage, they came from the ceiling. They came through a conduit. If I could follow the cables up. "Sarah," I said, "I'm going to the roof. I'm going to try to realign the microwave dish. If I can point it away from the relay, if I can point it directly at the ground, at the ravine, you'll blast it. I'll create a feedback loop," I said. "I'll feed its own signal back into the needle. Positive feedback, like a microphone too close to a speaker. It should overload the quartz. It should shatter the crystal." "Mark," she whispered, "if you do that, the energy has to go somewhere." "I know. It will kill you. The radiation alone, I'm already dead," I said, looking at my frozen, burnt arm. "I can feel it spreading. My fingers are numb. I can hear the humming in my teeth." "Me too," she said. "I can't feel my legs anymore. The stone is growing over them." "Hold on, Sarah. Just hold on." I stood up. I clipped the radio to my belt. I looked at the cable tray running vertically up the wall of the cage. It was a thick bundle of black wires, secured with zip ties. It disappeared into a square hole in the drop ceiling. I grabbed the bundle with my good arm. I tested my weight. It held. I looked at Miller. He was watching me. He tilted his head. "Where are you going, Mark?" he asked in my voice. "The shift isn't over." "I'm taking a break," I said. I jumped, grabbing the cables, hauling myself up. The pain in my bad shoulder was blinding, white-hot agony that made my vision swim. I grit my teeth, suppressing a scream. I wrapped my legs around the cable bundle, shimmying up toward the ceiling tiles. Miller slammed against the mesh. He reached through, his clawed fingers swiping at my boots. "Violation," he screeched. "Protocol violation." I kicked at his hand, connecting with his wrist. It felt like kicking a stone pillar. I pushed upward. 1 inch at a time. I reached the ceiling. I punched the acoustic tile with my fist. It crumbled. I pulled myself up into the plenum space, the dark, dusty gap between the ceiling and the concrete roof slab. It was a maze of ducts and conduits, smelling of fiberglass and dead rats. I lay there on the metal struts, gasping for breath. Below me, Miller was howling. It was a terrible sound, a mix of human frustration and digital corruption. He began to batter the cage door with the flashlight. Clang, clang, clang. He would get in. It was only a matter of time. I crawled over the server room, over the pit, toward the location of the utility closet. I had to find the roof hatch from above. The space was tight, wires brushed against my face like cobwebs. But these weren't cobwebs. They were warm. They were vibrating. I turned on the small light on the radio display. The wires, they weren't just wires. The copper cables in the ceiling were coated in something. A gray, crystalline growth. It looked like frost, but it was hard. It was growing out of the insulation, branching off like fungus. The infection had physically reached the building. The signal was rewriting the matter. It was turning the copper into quartz. It was turning the station into an extension of the ravine. I crawled faster. The crystal scraped my skin, cutting my palms. I didn't care. I reached the area above the utility closet. I saw the square outline of the hatch casing in the concrete slab above. I pushed against it. It was heavy, steel. I braced my back against a steel beam and pushed with my legs. I groaned, the pressure building in my head until I thought my eyes would pop. It gave. A crack of light. Rain. The storm. I shoved the hatch open. The wind howled. A physical blow that sucked the air out of the crawl space. Rain lashed my face, freezing and hard as gravel. I pulled myself up, scrambling out onto the gravel roof of the comm center. The world was chaos. It was a bruised, sick purple. The clouds were low, swirling in a tight vortex directly overhead. Lightning didn't flash. It crawled. Sheets of silent, violet electricity washed across the clouds, illuminating the tree line. And the sound. The air was screaming. It was the same sound I had heard on the phone, but magnified 1,000 times. The atmosphere itself was ionized, singing with the carrier wave of the entity. I stood up, fighting the wind. I looked toward the east, toward Echo Ridge. I could see it. 20 miles away, a pillar of light was rising from the ravine. It wasn't a spotlight. It was a reverse lightning bolt. A beam of pale, dirty light streaming upward from the earth, connecting to the storm. My God, I whispered. It was uploading. It wasn't just trapping hikers anymore. It had gathered enough signal, enough voices, enough power. It was broadcasting. It was trying to leave the valley. It was trying to hit the ionosphere. If it connected, if it bounced that signal off the atmosphere, it wouldn't just be our county. It would be everywhere. Every radio, every phone, every speaker in the hemisphere would start screaming with David's voice. I turned to the microwave dish. It was a massive drum, 6 feet across, mounted on a steel pylon near the edge of the roof. It was pointed at the relay tower on Mount Pisgah. I ran to it, slipping on the wet gravel. The control box on the base of the pylon was locked. I didn't have the key. I smashed the lock with the Motorola radio. Once, twice. The plastic casing of the radio cracked, but the lock held. "Come on," I screamed. I hit it again, putting my entire body weight into the swing. The hasp snapped. I tore the door open. Inside were the manual override cranks. Azimuth and elevation. I grabbed the elevation crank. It was rusted, stiff with cold. "Sarah." I yelled into the broken radio. "I'm at the dish. I'm going to turn it." "Mark." Her voice was barely audible over the wind. "It's singing. The phones, they're all ringing at once. It knows you're there. Let it know. I cranked the wheel. Groan. Metal shearing against metal. The massive dish shuddered. It began to tilt. Downward. Away from the mountain. Toward the ground. You can't do this, Mark. The voice came from behind me. I spun around. The roof hatch. Miller's head was rising out of the hole. He wasn't climbing a ladder. He was floating. The gray mist was lifting him, carrying him up through the opening like a cork in water. His uniform was shredded. His skin was pale, veined with black lines that pulsed in time with the lightning. The quartz eyes were glowing now, beaming two cones of flat light through the rain. The alignment is perfect, Miller said, his voice booming over the wind, amplified by the storm. Do not disrupt the transmission. He stepped onto the roof. He didn't walk. He glided, his boots dragging through the gravel. I turned back to the crank. I hauled on it. The dish tilted further. 10 degrees down. 20. Stop, Miller commanded. He raised his hand. A bolt of violet lightning arced from the cloud above, striking the roof between us. The gravel exploded. I was thrown sideways, slamming into the steel pylon of the dish. My vision went white. I tasted blood. I looked up. Miller was standing over me. He looked like a god of static. The rain sizzled as it hit his skin. It is inevitable, he said. The shift change is mandatory. We are the new protocol. He reached down, his hand glowing with cold fire. He was going to touch me. He was going to establish the connection. He was going to upload me. I looked at the radio in my hand. The casing was cracked. The battery was exposed. I looked at the control box of the dish, the high-voltage warning sticker. Asterisk danger, 480 V, times the panel was open. The bus bars were exposed. Protocol this, I spat. I jammed the antenna of the handheld radio into the 4080-volt bus bar. The radio battery exploded. A blue arc of plasma erupted from the panel, blindingly bright. It jumped from the box to the radio, from the radio to my hand, and from my hand, I lunged upward. I grabbed Miller's wrist. The circuit closed. The power of the entire microwave transmitter dumped into the entity's puppet. Miller screamed. It wasn't a digital screech. It was the sound of a mountain tearing apart. His body went rigid, arching backward. The quartz eyes shattered, exploding outward in a shower of dust. The gray mist evaporating from his pores caught fire, burning with a magnesium-white flame. The force of the discharge threw me back. I slid across the roof, stopping at the edge, my legs dangling over the 60-foot drop to the parking lot. I lay there, smoking, paralyzed. Miller, or what was left of him, fell. He collapsed into a pile of ash and empty uniform on the wet gravel. The silence returned, but only for a second. Then, the dish above me began to hum. I had shorted the control, but the magnetron was still firing, and the impact had jarred the gears. The dish was swinging. It was swinging down. It was swinging east, toward the ravine. Sarah, I whispered into the darkness. Cover your ears. I dragged myself to the edge of the roof and looked toward the pillar of light. The microwave dish locked into position. And then, it fired. The sound wasn't loud. That's the misconception people have about energy. They think power has to roar. They think it has to shake the fillings out of your teeth and shatter windows. But when you're dealing with pure, focused electromagnetic radiation, when you're dealing with a microwave transmission, powerful enough to carry a signal over a mountain range, it doesn't roar. It hums. It's a vibration that bypasses the ear and goes straight to the marrow. When the dish fired, I didn't hear a boom. I felt a snap. It felt like a rubber band snapping inside the center of my skull. The air in front of the dish, the space occupied by the falling rain, instantly turned into white steam. The beam was invisible. but its path was marked by a sudden violent tumult of vaporized water. A hole punched through the storm, aiming straight down into the valley of Echo Ridge. I was lying on the wet gravel, clutching my burnt hand to my chest, staring over the edge of the roof. I watched the invisible hammer fall. It hit the ravine in less than a microsecond. At first, nothing happened. The pillar of dirty, pale light rising from the needle in the canyon just stood there, pulsing, feeding the storm. It looked solid, like a column of illuminated smoke. Then, the feedback loop engaged. If you've ever stood too close to a PA system when someone drops a microphone, you know that initial sharp squeal that makes you flinch. Now imagine that squeal, amplified by the geological mass of a quartz vein running 5 miles deep into the Earth's crust. Imagine the microphone is a radio tower and the speaker is a tectonic plate. The sound that came up from the ravine wasn't a noise. It was a physical weapon. It started as a low groan, the sound of metal shearing under impossible weight. The pillar of light wavered. It rippled, like a reflection in a disturbed pool. Then the color changed. The sick, bruised violet of the entity's transmission turned blinding, stark white. The dish above me rattled on its mount. The gears I had jammed screamed as the force of the signal pushed back against the emitter. I curled into a ball, pressing my hands over my ears, opening my mouth to equalize the pressure. Then, the voices started. It wasn't just the screech of the feedback. It was the payload. The entity had been absorbing signals for decades. It had swallowed the voices of hikers, of loggers, of search and rescue pilots, of terrified deputies. It had stored them in the crystal lattice of the ravine, compressing them, archiving them. When the feedback loop hit, the archive exploded. I heard them all at once, a cacophony of the dead, screaming in unison. I heard David's wet, rattling breath amplified to the volume of a jet engine. I heard Sarah's voice crying for help. I heard my own voice giving evacuation orders. I heard the dispatcher from 1998 screaming about the copper wire. It was a wall of sound that rose up from the trees and hit the cloud layer, bouncing back down, shaking the gravel on the roof. The pillar of light fractured. It didn't fade. It shattered. It looked like a glass skyscraper imploding. Huge shards of luminescent energy broke off and dissolved into static. The needle, the twisted metal structure Sarah had described, began to glow cherry red, then white hot. From 20 miles away, through the rain and the steam, I saw the explosion. It wasn't a fireball. It was a shock wave of pure magnetic force. A ring of distortion expanded outward from the ravine, flattening the trees. The bones, the piles of fused phones and radios detonated. Every battery, every capacitor, every coil of copper wire in that pit overloaded simultaneously. The ground flash lit up the entire horizon, brighter than the lightning, brighter than the sun. And then the scream cut off. It didn't fade out. It stopped instantaneously. 1 second, the world was ending in a choir of agony. The next, there was only the sound of the wind and the hiss of rain hitting the hot metal of the dish. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. It pressed down on me, ringing in my ears, filling the void where the monster used to be. I lay there for a long time. I don't know how long. Minutes, maybe. The adrenaline that had kept me moving, that had let me climb the cables and short the circuit, was draining away, leaving behind a cold, trembling shock. My hand was a ruin. I couldn't feel my fingers. The smell of ozone and burnt meat, the smell of Miller was thick in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of the vaporized rain. I rolled onto my back. The sky was changing. The tight, unnatural vortex of purple clouds was breaking apart. The lightning had stopped. The storm was returning to normal. Just a heavy, miserable Oregon rain, stripped of its malice. "Sarah," I croaked. The name came out as a whisper. My throat was raw, scorched by the screaming. I fumbled for the Motorola radio. It was still clipped to my belt, but the casing was cracked. The plastic melted where the arc had jumped. I didn't know if it still worked. I didn't know if the battery had survived the discharge. I held it up with my good hand. The screen was dead. No light. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I shook it. I hit it against the gravel. "Come on," I begged. "Just one more time. Just one." I turned the volume knob. A burst of static hissed from the speaker. It was faint, crackling, but it was there. The analog circuit was still alive. I pressed the transmit button. The plastic was hot to the touch. "Sarah," I waited. The silence stretched out. I listened to the rain drumming on the roof. I listened to the blood pounding in my ears. "Sarah, please, copy." Static, just the empty, white noise of an open channel. I closed my eyes. The image of the ravine filled my mind. The explosion, the shockwave. She was right next to it. She was right next to the needle. If the feedback loop had shattered the rock, it would have shattered everything near it. "Sarah, click the mic," I said, tears mixing with the rain on my face. "If you can't talk, just click. Give me a sign." Nothing. I let my hand drop. The radio clattered against the stones. I had killed it. I had killed the entity. But I had killed her too. I had made the call. I had cleared the board. That's the job, isn't it? You make the decision. You allocate the resources. You trade one life for the many. I had stopped the signal from getting out, from infecting the rest of the world, and the cost was Unit 4 King 2. Then, the radio squawked. It wasn't a voice. It was a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. Click, click. I scrambled up, grabbing the radio, pressing it to my ear. "Sarah, Mark," a voice whispered. It was faint. It sounded like she was speaking from the bottom of the ocean. But it was her. It wasn't the metallic hollow mimicry of the entity. It was Sarah. It had her cadence, her tremor, her humanity. "I'm here," I sobbed. "I'm here." "Are you okay?" It stopped, she said. Her voice was slurred, dreamy. The singing stopped. The phones, they all went dark. The faces in the stone, they closed their eyes. "Are you hurt?" "I can't feel my legs," she said. "The rock, it shattered. It let me go, but I think my legs are broken." "That's okay," I said, laughing hysterically, the relief washing over me like a tidal wave. "Broken is okay. Broken we can fix. Just stay put. Don't move. Help is coming." "Mark," she said. It was so loud. "Did you hear it scream?" "Yeah," I said, looking at the smoking microwave dish. "I heard it. It sounded scared," she whispered. "It sounded like a child." "It wasn't a child, Sarah. It was a trap, just a trap." "Okay," she said. "I'm tired, Mark. I'm going to sleep now." "No," I shouted. "No, sleep. Sarah, stay with me. Talk to me. Tell me what you're going to do when you get off shift. Tell me about your dog. Tell me anything." "My dog," she mumbled. "Buster. He hates the rain." "Good. Keep talking about Buster. Stay on the line." I sat there on the edge of the roof, shivering, holding the radio, listening to her breathe, listening to her ramble about a golden retriever named Buster. I sat there until the darkness was broken by a new light, blue and red, flashing against the low clouds. I looked over the edge. In the parking lot below, 3 state police cruisers were skidding to a halt, their sirens cutting through the rain. A fire truck was turning the corner, its air horn blasting. They had come. The blackout I caused, the destruction of the grid, it had triggered a massive mutual aid response. They weren't coming for the monster. They were coming because the 911 center had gone dark. They were coming to see why the world had stopped listening. "Sarah," I said, "the cavalry is here. I see the lights." "That's good," she whispered. "No more black light. Only blue." I watched the troopers spill out of their cars, weapons drawn. They were looking up at the roof. They were shouting orders I couldn't hear. I stood up. I raised my hands. "Don't shoot," I screamed, my voice cracking. "I'm the dispatcher. I'm Mark." A spotlight hit me, blindingly bright. "Hands where we can see them," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Lie down. Face down on the roof." I dropped to my knees. I laid the radio gently on the gravel next to me. "Officer down," I yelled at the light. "Echo Ridge, mile marker 14. You need to send a bird. She's in the ravine. Get down." I lay down. I pressed my cheek against the cold, wet stones. I looked at the pile of ash a few feet away. The rain was washing it away, turning Miller into a streak of gray sludge running toward the gutter. They wouldn't find a body. They would find a uniform, shredded and burned, and a pile of organic residue. They would find a melted radio. They would find a microwave dish, pointed at the ground, its internals fused into a solid block of copper and steel. They came up the ladder. I heard the boots. I felt the hands on my back, the zip ties cinching my wrists, my good wrist and my burned one. I screamed when they tightened it, but I didn't fight. "Check the ravine," I kept saying as they hauled me up. "Check the ravine. Sarah is there. David is there." "Shut up," a trooper said, pushing me toward the hatch. "You have the right to remain silent." I laughed, a weak, broken sound. "Silent," I said. "Yeah, I like silent." Times, the official report, called it a catastrophic electrical failure caused by an unprecedented localized geomagnetic event. They said the storm overloaded the grid. They said the backup generator malfunctioned, causing an arc flash that blew out the comm center. They said the stress of the shift, combined with carbon monoxide leaking from the faulty generator, caused me to suffer a psychotic break. They said I hallucinated the calls. They said I sabotaged the equipment in a state of delirium. As for Miller, they listed him as a missing person. They found his uniform on the roof. They found his flashlight. They theorized that he had been blown off the roof by the wind, or that in the confusion of the fire, he had wandered off into the woods and died of exposure. They never found a body, just ash in the gutters. I didn't argue. I sat in the interrogation room, my hand bandaged, my shoulder in a sling, and I nodded. I signed the papers. I accepted the suspension. I accepted the mandatory psychiatric hold. Because they found Sarah, the state police helicopter plucked her out of the ravine at dawn. She was hypothermic, suffering from 2 broken legs and severe crush injuries, but she was alive. They found her lying next to the old repeater station foundation. They didn't find the needle. They found a twisted lump of slag metal that looked like it had been melted by a nuclear blast. They didn't find the phones. They found shards of glass and plastic fused into the rock, unidentifiable debris that they assumed was trash dumped there over the years. They found David's body too. It was right where Sarah said it was, but it wasn't standing. It was frozen, half buried in a landslide of mud and quartz. The coroner confirmed he had been dead for days. I lost my job, of course. You can't destroy a county's emergency infrastructure and keep your badge, even if you're pleading insanity. I was charged with criminal mischief and reckless endangerment. My union lawyer cut a deal. Probation. Mandatory therapy. A permanent ban from emergency services employment. I took the deal. I didn't care about the job. I cared that the ringing had stopped. I visited Sarah in the hospital a week later. She was in traction, her legs encased in plaster, her face pale and drawn. She looked older. The light in her eyes was different. It was dimmer. We didn't talk much at first. We just sat there, listening to the beep of the heart monitor, grateful for the simple, mechanical honesty of the machine. "They think we're crazy, Mark," she said eventually, staring at the ceiling. "I know," I said. "Let them think it. It's safer that way." I can still hear it sometimes, she whispered. When it's quiet. When the AC turns off. I hear the hum. I hear the breathing. It's just trauma, I said, though I didn't believe it. It's just an echo. Is it? She looked at me. Miller, he said. We were the new protocol. He said the shift change was mandatory. Miller is dead, I said firmly. We killed it, Sarah. I watched it burn. I watched the signal die. Energy doesn't die, she said. It just changes forms. You taught me that. Physics. I didn't have an answer for that. I squeezed her hand. A real, warm, living hand, and I left. That was 3 months ago. I live in a small apartment now, on the other side of town. I don't go out much. I work from home, doing data entry for a logistics company. It's boring. It's quiet. I like it. I don't own a cell phone anymore. I have a landline. But I keep the ringer off. I don't listen to the radio. I don't watch TV. I keep the windows closed, even in the summer. I thought it was over. I really did. I thought the silence I had bought with my career and my sanity was permanent. But last night, the storm came back. It wasn't a big storm, just a standard Oregon drizzle. A little bit of wind, but the lights in my apartment flickered. Just once. I was sitting at my desk, typing invoices. My computer screen blinked. A new window popped up. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a system error. It was an audio file. Asterisk fill a name. Shift_change.wave times. I stared at it. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. That old familiar panic rising in my throat. I knew I shouldn't play it. I knew I should unplug the computer, smash the hard drive and run. But I'm a dispatcher. We answer. We listen. It's the curse. I clicked play. I expected to hear the scream. I expected to hear the static, or the feedback loop, or David's rattling breath. But it wasn't David. It was me. 911. What is the location of your emergency? It was my voice. Crystal clear. Perfect fidelity. I am sending help. Stay on the line. Then, a pause. A wet, static hiss. You can't stop the signal, Mark, my voice said from the speakers. We are the echo. Then, the sound of breathing, my breathing. Rattle, hiss, click. It was the sound of my own lungs, recorded from the server room, recorded from the roof, recorded from the phone calls I made to Sarah. The file ended. I sat there in the silence, watching the cursor blink. The tower is down. The ravine is quiet. The police say the case is closed. But I know now that something was listening the whole time. It didn't just want to feed. It wanted to learn. It didn't need the tower to survive. It just needed a voice. And now, it has mine. I looked at the phone on my desk, the landline I keep unplugged. The red light on the base station started to flash. Blink, blink, blink. Incoming call. I didn't answer it. I'm never answering again. But as I sat there, watching the light pulse in the darkness of my apartment, I realized the terrifying truth. The worst part of the job isn't the screaming. It's not the silence. It's knowing that even when you hang up, the line is never truly dead.